Loyalty to the people or to the office, the stigma of Fiji's public service. In a democratic society, the relationship between those who hold political office and the citizens they serve is crucial. On one hand, elected officials are tasked with representing the interests of their constituents and making decisions that will benefit their community. On the other hand, citizens are expected to hold their elected officials accountable for their actions and hold them to a high standard of ethical behavior. One of the key issues in this relationship is the question of loyalty. Should elected officials be loyal to the office they hold or to the people they serve? This is a complex question with no easy answer, as both perspectives have valid arguments. On the first view, elected officials have a duty to be loyal to the office they hold. This means that they must put the interests of the government and the country above their own personal interests. This requires a level of selflessness and sacrifice, as elected officials must often make difficult decisions that may not be popular with their constituents. The second view, elected officials are also expected to be loyal to the people they serve, normally the people that voted them in, their constituents. This means that they must listen to the concerns of these people and work to address them. This requires a level of transparency and accountability, as elected officials must be willing to explain their actions and justify them to the public. We've seen this through our social media posts on Chat Fiji and what goes around those topics that make headlines and chit-chats online. In practice, the ideal balance between these two forms of loyalty is not always easy to achieve. Elected officials must constantly weigh the competing demands of the office they hold and the needs of the people they serve. This can be a difficult task and often thankless. It is one that is essential to the functioning of a healthy democracy. I can easily relate to this in my time as a public servant. The work culture takes a lot of effort and patience, especially when you're in the most common positions as a clerk, field officer, driver, or even the office cleaner. There are many different types of people within the public sector who have different priorities and values. For example, some people may join the public service wanting more money, while others care more about transparency and accountability within their organization, or the lack thereof. The net result is that there are many competing interests within government agencies, which makes it difficult for any one person's needs to be met consistently over time, because they may conflict with another group's desires at any given moment, depending on what situation arises first. The via bosso, when you kills and want to boss everyone around, or masipolo to the boss so you can get promoted, or there is some dirty deal happening and you're the one getting the cream of it. This is when the most usual flunk around word in the office springs up, politics. Oh, na politics ranguri. There may also be a lack of training and education for the public service employees. As a result, some employees may not be qualified for their position, while others may not know how to do their job properly without proper training and mentoring by more senior staff. This normally comes by when there is no standard operating procedure or SOPs. Or there is one, but we just go with the flow. If you're not a public servant, it can be hard to understand the moral code of the government. For example, if you were to break your work laptop or take a few dollars from the petty cash fund, chances are that you will get investigated, surcharged, or worst case scenario, get fired. But what if your boss did those things? Would it still be wrong? The answer is yes. But again, only if they're not doing their job properly, right? The consequences for them would be more lenient because they have connections in higher places. We know this. In fact, there are certain ethical rules that apply even when someone isn't doing their job right. For example, if someone is stealing money from taxpayers' pockets, a problem in many countries, not only our own, then we still say it's wrong for them because, well, we don't want people stealing our money. In many respects, the most controversial aspect of being a public servant is how you choose to do your job. Some operate vastly differently from the rest of society. In many cases, it could be a code based on family and friends, not on what is best for Fiji or her people. It's not about doing what's right or wrong in this case, but rather how it affects you and yours. Some public servants see their first responsibilities as being to family and friends. They believe that any other responsibility they may have must be secondary to these duties, even if it means breaking the laws or making decisions that are not in the best interests of their countrymen and women. Like it's your father's office, or you're getting too comfortable in the office that you forget your role as a public servant, to be a servant to the public, the people, not your father. It's not your clan's office or your matangali's office anyway. In fact, if anything, I'm surprised by how little has been written about this aspect of Fiji's political paradigm. The fact that loyalty is given first and foremost to those with whom one shares bloodlines or bonds of kinship. Backdoor dealings, the disregard of ethics and the justification of a moral good with unethical practice. And yet this remains one of its central features, the importance of family and friends in Fijian culture, the role these relationships play in defining who we are as individuals, how they influence our choices at work and home, how they affect our behavior towards others, particularly strangers. The same applies when it comes time for choosing which job offers best meets one's needs, as well as those closest members surrounding us like spouses, partners, children, etc., etc. It's a long-standing tradition that has helped Fiji remain relatively stable and peaceful, but it can also be an obstacle to good governance. The problem is that when one puts family, or tribe for that matter, before country, it becomes difficult for the government to get anything done. The Fijian way of doing things revolves around consensus. No decision can be made without the consent of all parties involved, even if they are not present. Here, we finally see the question of loyalty in politics is as a complex one with no easy answer. Elected officials must strive to find a balance between being loyal to the office they hold and being loyal to the people they serve. This requires a commitment to selflessness, transparency, and accountability, as well as the ability to make difficult decisions. Ultimately, the success of a democratic society depends on the ability of elected officials, public servants from the ground up, even to the Prime Minister, to navigate this delicate balance. Vinaka. My 2 Cents is a Fijian podcast where we discuss current events and provide perspective on a variety of controversial topics. We try to post weekly videos for our Facebook and YouTube channels on topics of interest. If this is something that sounds like you'd be interested in, please follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel with links in the description. Until our next episode, Vinaka.